Second. Okay.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order at exactly 7 o'clock. And we don't have any alternates, so we don't have to worry about that. Are there any additions or changes in the order of the agenda? Okay,
None that I know of. No.
very good. All right. And we don't have any audience of citizens here, so we'll get into the old business. Item 5.1, IWWC 2122-07, the application of Jim Blair to rebuild the lake wall and replace an existing dock at 1 Beach Road, Assessor's Map 0130, Lot 018 in the LAR zone. Okay, I guess we all went most of us was at the site walk, and we got a chance to see what was going on there a little bit. But John, you want to bring us, or Isabel, you want to bring us in on the what happened? Oh
yeah. Well, Jim and I have gone back and forth at least 3 times and fine-tuned the plan, or at least my understanding of it. It's always been Jim's understanding of his own plan, but he sort of refreshed my memory on his sequence, which was my concern, and the location of the wall in respect to pins and the existing embankment and the existing stone wall. So, Jim, do you want to touch on some of those finer notes that we ended up on? Not that we disagree, but we needed further clarification.
Sure. So,
Please, thank you.
yep, yes, sir. So we're going to try to, I think once we get the junipers and all the stuff out of the way, we'll take a look at where we can actually be, and if hugging the bank makes the most sense, getting in close, we'll get as close as we can without having disruption to the tree or from the tree to our structure, and also trying to reduce that slope immediately above gradient there at the back of the lot, what comes off the deck. It's sort of a unnavigable sort of area right now. And so the location of the wall is going to help, with some of that and the maintenance of it following.
Okay. And I think the other point, so what Jim is saying and was that rather than going to the furthest outer pin, that he was try to hug the existing stone wall and this existing bank without really going into it, meaning we're accepting that the wall is going to be coming out 2 to 3 feet into the lake, not quite as far as it was 40, 50 years ago, but we're not going to be going back into the bank. So the new face of the wall is equal to the existing embankment. And a couple of reasons that Isabel and Jim sort of reminded me of. One is that there's very little backyard or very little front yard, and it's very steep. So the further we push this in, the more unnavigable it becomes and the more treacherous it becomes. So putting that wall out even an extra couple feet and being able to slope that down a little bit to the wall rather than having it be a sheer cut straight down to the wall makes good sense. And certainly, I think we've all agreed that the wall used to go out to the point that was witnessed by that pin on the neighbor's property. So that's not the issue. The issue was that I didn't want to use that as a face for the wall. So I requested that that Jim start it back as close as he can, which he understands, and we're going to get that. And it is quite treacherous. And the further we go into the embankment, the more damage we're going to do to the roots of that tree. And when that tree comes down, it's going to take the wall with it anyway. So, but not for another lifetime, I'm sure. The second issue that I need a clarification on is that Jim is going to construct a road. He's going to put geotextile fabric down and then fill on top of it so we can bring his machine in and out to bring material and to do the wall and to remove material. And what I didn't quite follow until he provided his recent narrative is that that road is going to stay there until the springtime. He's not going to take it back out and then have to try to stabilize it in March. It's going to remain there. And by remaining there, what it will do is it'll capture any water coming off of the house and the deck and underneath the deck. So we're not going to get any movement of water from the site through the disturbed area immediate to the wall. So that's a good feature, that it's going to remain there. And then in the springtime, when we have a growing season, and this is a pretty good technique that he has, he'll be able to remove the material from the top of this geotextile material fabric, which is very sturdy. So the material will come out, and then he rolls back the fabric. The grass would have probably died off, but all it's going to require is a raking and a matting and some seed, and it's ready to go. So that's pretty good technique, and he's used it on a couple other sites with some success. So I'm pretty confident, especially on this particular site, that it makes the most sense that this is the measure that he uses to get to the site and retreat from the site. So I have no problem with that.
2 questions. Thank you, John, as always. Hi, Jim.
Hi.
You mentioned the machine is, or the creation of this, for lack of a better word, road and machinery
Yeah.
going in and out. Jim, is that road then on the property, not on the lake bed?
Correct. It's on, yeah. We come in off the driveway. It's to help. It's really the lawn, not even so much as getting to where we're going. And then the management of that afterwards for erosion and such, but all the approach, as soon as you leave that driveway, if it's not frozen, you're going in.
Yeah.
And you've witnessed that. I buried a 4-wheel drive truck, in lawn that we thought was,
I know.
mistakenly, I don't know what I was thinking on that one. And so there's really not a lot of silver bullets, but this method has saved us quite a bit. And then what happens is now we haven't created another dynamic with rutting and potential, destruction of stabilized surfaces. Everything sort of remains intact, and we don't go off that mat. We don't go off that road until we get to the lake, and then then we have to get down into the lake bed. But that material stays up on the bank. We protect it with a silt fence down gradient always, so that it doesn't have a chance to migrate. There are maybe a couple of water sources on this particular job, but we're going to use silt fence and hay bales for diversion, so the water sort of goes to one side or the other, and our road doesn't take a straight on hit in big rain events. And we all know we're gonna have big rain events. Even if we have snow, we're gonna have big rain events in December, definitely in January. Something's gonna happen there, and we'll be ready for it with silt fence. And I do plan on trying to get this wall going right away, so that when we wrap, it should be sometime in early January at the latest, just depending on timing, maybe sooner.
Good.
Being kind of optimistic there, but that wall is up. There's going to be filter fabric in place. There's going to be silt fence as a last resort to save, anything that could possibly migrate over the wall, which I don't see happening. And especially in this particular one, there's going to be quite a bit of a cavity there. And that's going to have to be filled later with soils and so forth.
Sure.
And then just as John said, we divert the water from the deck, we divert the water from any roof sources, and then come, April, May, we're pulling all that out and doing adding soil as we need to. Use really good good combination of perennial rye and turf seed, and we get pretty quick germination depending on how warm the days are. And we're also using straw matting now. I'm even on jobs that are off the lake, if there's any kind of slope at all, that's straw matting, again, really saves us, helps with the customer, we get things established quicker. Then you pull the straw matting out later and you've got a lawn in there, and it works out pretty good. So,
Terrific. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate the update. The second area in question was, I recall when we did our site visit that, and John, if I heard you correctly, there may be some fill-in to what was the original wall, lake wall that eroded. And I recall that you were looking for a survey to try to figure out where that was in terms of the potential to fill in the lake bed. Did we get a copy of that survey to try to understand?
I think the use of the word survey may have been survey stake because there was, is that stake, that metal pin, Jim, is that the property line?
yeah, I really have no idea what it is.
Probably is the
Oh.
property.
It could very
Yeah.
well be. It
Yeah.
seems to make sense that the property line is right there, lines up with the fence. It kind of is in line with the wall that's immediately adjacent. That is definitely on the neighbor's side. So it stands to reason that's what it is. The site plan, et cetera, that's in the file at town hall there's no survey, there's no anything, nothing really. You got stuff.
We've run through that before
Yeah,
with
yeah.
lake properties. Is there going to be any, did I hear you correctly, John and or Jim, potential to fill in part of the lake bed, be it a square foot or 70 or 100?
So,
And if so, would that require town approval?
well, now that's a good question. The issue is, as we're addressing it, John's addressing it, and I'm trying to answer the questions, I hope to everyone's satisfaction, is that my original desire is to go out and meet the corner,
Correct,
the existing wall on the abutting property.
correct.
It seems to make the most sense to me, but I do understand where Mr. Valenti's coming from. And also, we're not, this particular homeowner and, myself, we're not necessarily in a desire to gain property. And we're really talking about a couple of feet, because I believe that wall, and I have to take the foliage out of there and really get a good shot with the lake down to understand. But I think that wall is going to go at an angle if it's going to where I want to be. So you're talking about a little pie slice there if I went all the way out to that corner.
Correct.
And, so it's not a large volume. And again, it's really to make, if we all feel the same way about that tree, and I know the homeowner does, that the preservation of that tree is kind of important. And also, you're going to build a lake wall, and those roots are, quite, they do their own thing, and that'll get in. I don't care how good I build a wall, that might get into it and disrupt things later. So we want to stay away from that so that, everything stays, intact and functioning well for quite a number of years.
I understand that, and I thank you, Jim, for the explanation and the preservation of current tree, et cetera. I could be wrong. There may be some precedent, and or LMAC may ask the question in terms of if there is potential to, whether it's an inch or a foot or 1,000 feet, quote unquote, fill in part of the lake bed. Is that something that's under the prerogative of wetlands, LMAC, or does that require town approval?
If I might answer that question real quick, and then I'll maybe shut up because I don't want to say too much. We had two representatives from LMAC out there, and both representatives agreed with me to meet that far point. So that's LMAC. And LMAC, from my understanding, does not necessarily speak for Board of Selectmen, but gives recommendations.
Correct.
And they withheld that recommendation based on what wetlands would say. And wetlands is the desire is to stay, the wetlands agent, excuse me, the desire is to stay as close to the bank as possible.
Correct.
So I'm not demanding, nor is anyone demanding, that we go out to that corner. And I think it's one of those things where whatever, I think I know what I want to do. I don't think it's a large detriment to the lake. I think there's precedent for me to be able to do this. Plus, we need to observe it with the water down and the foliage out of the way so we all understand what it is. And I'll leave it at that, you guys to decide where I go with this wall.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I'm on the fence on this one, because you've just mentioned there's precedent to say maybe this has happened before in other walls. There are those who will come to, who in particular, I've had a member of the lake community come and say, you know, you couldn't, you weren't allowed to fill in mine, but now we're going to allow someone else to fill in theirs. So I think there's precedent both ways, and we have to be very, very careful, again, whether it's an inch or a foot, that we're doing it for the right reasons, if we can identify what those reasons are. Because there's precedent both ways. There are people who would not take kindly to the fact of it maybe have filled in part of the lake.
So again, I'm risking kind of revealing my unintelligence, but the way that I feel about this as a contractor, just removing myself from someone who does care deeply about Columbia Lake and, you know, all that goes into that, is that I want to build a wall. I'm going to build a wall in that spot. I think somebody has to set where that mark is. And I might be asking for trouble with this, but I've been down the road before, and representatives of LMAC and representatives of wetlands have helped determine the face of walls. So what I'm saying is, if this board is gracious enough to approve this project, then and there's going to be any issues, then a representative of the town is going to have to be there to determine where I'm to build the wall. Because we just, at some point I have to move forward, and I'm not building it tomorrow. And even when we go to, if I'm granted the permit, I'm not going to build it if the permit's issued as such that says that somebody has to be there. So somebody just has to be there on the day that I'm starting, so we can locate the wall and begin the project and move on.
And maybe that suggestion is something to discuss. We have LMAC Wednesday evening, and what's a little confusing to me, but this would be an LMAC issue, and I'll take it to LMAC, is our construction guidelines that were created by LMAC and approved by the board would not allow us to fill in the lake bed, as I recall from that. And I'm sure Wednesday evening, someone will correct me if I'm wrong. I was just looking for the guidelines. I don't have them in front of me. So I just want to be cautious that we make the right decision, and that if it comes back to us, we made whatever decision is we made, and not to set precedent that, well, we took it out to where we thought the wall was. We have people on this lake who then could say, I could fill in 1,000 square feet because that's where my wall used to be, as an example. Yeah. So I just think we have to take care to ensure that we don't fill in any lake bed.
Okay, my turn. Let me finish up
Yes,
with this
John,
conversation.
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, this wasn't easy. This wasn't easy, and I changed my opinion on this and quickly when a couple issues were brought to my attention. And one is that yes, I would prefer the wall begin at the embankment. If that were the case, and the wall was 4 foot wide at the base, he would be back into that backyard and snuggled up against that deck, where they wouldn't be able to step off that deck without falling into the lake. So there was a safety issue there. So the lake did take the lake did take some land, and now unfortunately they lost that land. We don't have to give it back to them, but it doesn't make sense for us to make them put that wall in 4 feet from the existing embankment. that wouldn't be it would be treacherous and it wouldn't be safe. So looking at that a number of times, we agreed to, rather than going to the points where the wall once was, and I think we all agreed that the origin of that wall back 50 years ago, whatever, was to those points. It was very apparent based on the property line, based on it meeting the other wall. But we did not like for the application to read that he would go back to the original points. So the way we rephrased it was that the wall would begin at the embankment, and that's where he was to start the toe of the wall at the embankment that exists there now. We had gone and taken some of the lake back in various situations over the years. We don't do it without discretion. We don't do it without a lot of thought, and we don't do it without the Board of Selectmen approving it. We don't act on this application until the Board of Selectmen does. We don't act on it until ALMAC recommends to the Board of Selectmen, and from what I heard, both members present at that site walk agreed that the wall should go out to those pins. I disagreed. It's just a matter of a foot or so, but I felt that the construction could take place at the toe of that slope, and it could be done in a way that would be safe and not take any more land away from the owners. Like I said, we don't have to do that, but I don't see how that property would be manageable if we went back 4 feet into that existing property. And all you got to do is take a walk out there tomorrow, and you would see exactly what I mean. It would be very difficult for them to use their backyard and come around the existing deck. So we'll leave it up to the Board of Selectmen. We'll leave it up to the recommendation from ALMAC, and we don't act until next month. We're unfortunately, the way things happened this month, they don't, the Board of Selectmen meet tomorrow night. And I guess they're going to act based on the recommendation from ALMAC. And if they don't have one, then they'll be acting next month, and we'll be a month. I think the Board of Selectmen meets twice in 1 month. So
Yes.
maybe Jim would still be able to come back in November for an approval.
Well, Jim,
But
did you get the subcommittee approval from ALMAC? Because if you did, it probably went to the Board of Selectmen for tomorrow.
I believe Mr. Harrington wrote the letter and has emailed it to Jennifer, so it's on the agenda for tomorrow night.
So it should be fine.
I heard it was on the agenda. I didn't know
I think
necessarily that.
I think we just should be cognizant. I think, John, safety certainly, and if we have precedent for safety, that certainly helps us understand when someone or if someone comes and say they're filling in the lake.
No, this is the only situation where safety was a factor.
Okay.
Quite literally, there was no other lakeside property, and maybe we've done 70 in the last 30 years. There was no other property quite like this, with those slopes, and then that land right up to the developed site within a few feet. Most lake walls, there's 30, 40 feet till you get to the house, but this is not the case.
Sure.
And like I said, I don't believe it's safe. If we took another 4 feet of land to keep that wall at the face of that embankment, and that's what we could do, but I don't believe it's a safe situation. I wouldn't sign my name to it. So let the Board of Selectmen make the big choice here, and if they say fine, then I think it's reasonable for the commission to approve taking back some of the land that was taken by the lake.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Yep. All right, so nothing we can do on this matter until the Board of Selectmen make their decision. So we'll hold it off till the next meeting. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
And we'll work on some conditions of approval with respect to some of the issues that were raised tonight. We'll modify our existing summary ruling, which you all have a copy of. So we'll try to address the issues that were raised tonight.
Okay, very good. Okay, next item on the agenda is
Thank you, everybody.
yep.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Jim. Okay. 5.2 IWWC 2122-08, the application of Christian Grasso to build a driveway through approximately 1,600 square feet of wetlands adjacent to 92 Pine Street. Assessors map 034, lot 020A, in the RA zone. And I know we all went to the site walk on this also. And it looked like there's some pretty wet spots in there, John.
Is Mr. Grazo in attendance? No?
No, he's not.
Oh, okay. So, well, I think Isabel is up to date on this here and can answer your questions, John.
Sure, absolutely. So just to give you a bit of an update, Mr. Grosso did get a soil scientist out to the site. We haven't had a plan back from his surveyor and soil scientist yet with everything marked out, but the wetlands were flagged. And it looks like he'll be at that initial crossing going through little under 80 feet, 80 linear feet of wetlands up through the trench. If you remove the berm right in front of the trench, which John and myself are in agreement that we really wouldn't consider it wetlands, it's been all filled in. It's roughly 72 feet in total being crossed. So that's where the 1,600 square feet being filled in comes from. The only other point of access for him to get onto his property and build his home would be the other side of the lot, and that would actually include a wetlands crossing as well. So it wouldn't be any significant improvement there. And he also has concerns that that would impact his neighbor's privacy because that driveway would then have to hug the back of the neighbor's property. So this really looks like it's the best route for him to go, and minimal impact on the wetlands and on his neighbors in the area. And then from there, he'll be following an existing farm road that I think we all looked at when we did the site walk about a month ago. And there are 2 ponds in one location that the road crosses between. Those are both wetlands. And that area, within about 60 feet or so, he may need to do some minor grading just to get the driveway to be, within 10% so that he can get up to the top of the hill where he wants to put his house. Other than that, I think we've kind of covered everything. He's looking right now at putting a pipe in the middle of the driveway just to make sure, in the beginning, to make sure that water doesn't well up on his driveway. Everything else will be geotextile fabric and material, which we've seen with other wetlands crossings before. And I think that's about it so far. John might have some additional comments to add from that.
I only have one further thing to bring up, and you were all out there, and John, and I remember John and I crossing the trench together, and we walked over the wetland area, and we didn't know it was wetlands at that time. So it had been disturbed through farming. I think the farmer pretty much tried to drain that wetlands, and the way he drained it is later years has failed. So now the water is back in that area, but there's no wetland vegetation. It's all grass and hay. But our initial visit there, we did not determine that that was wetlands. So we missed it, and it was only on a subsequent walk did we then see that there was a higher regime of wetness, and we did some augering, and we determined that it was wetlands, and we asked Mr. Grazo to go hire a soil scientist. But all I'm really bringing up is that this is just another site, and it's one of 3 sites that we've come across in the last couple of months that have been sort of disturbed, altered, and all of them had been disturbed or altered either by farming or by opening up the area where the wetlands then dried out. The moisture regime wasn't there to support the wetlands vegetation, and that happens on some of these upland wetland areas. In this particular case, it was apparent to me that it was the farmer had tried to dry out that area, and he was successful early on, but later, lack of maintenance of that drainage swale, the water just returned to that site, and it became apparent that there was a wet area. So that's it. That's all I have to add is that we're not looking at a pristine wetlands that the Grassos want to fill. And then I did walk and look at the other area, and it's just as wet as this area. And there's a better, a more pristine wetlands on the other side than there is on this side. So I think it's a better choice. And we're waiting for the plan, as Isabel said. We're still waiting for a plan.
Okay, anybody have any questions? If not, we can go to the summary ruling. Okay, John, do you have the summary ruling here?
No, we're not going to act on this until next month.
Oh,
We're gonna
okay,
wait
I
for
thought we were gonna,
No, well, you know, we're going to wait for the surveyor to finish the house plan and for the mapping of the wetlands to be on a plan. And I had told Mr.
Okay.
Grasso that we'd need that. I know we talked about approving it this month, but we decided to wait since this new information came in.
okay, very good. So we'll hold it off
Thank you.
until next meeting.
Yep.
Okay, under new business, we need to receive the application of Manuel Correa to construct a single-family home, well, septic, and lawn within 100 foot of wetlands, and to fill 400 cubic feet of square feet, I'm sorry, of wetlands at 8 Baker Hill Road. You want to give us a summary of that, John or Isabel?
Sure, I can give you a summary. So Mr. Correa is not in attendance, but they came in earlier this month and submitted their plan. It's a single family home. The well, the septic, the driveway, the lawn, everything in the plan is located within the upland review area. The site, when you go to it, I think it'll be necessary for us to schedule a site walk at some point, just so everyone can see it. But the wetlands in the area are extremely degraded. It's actually even more difficult to identify them than it was at Mr. Grasso's property. We were able to see that there were wetlands in the area primarily because they had already had a soil scientist come out and mark the location of the wetlands. So looking at the site plan, I'm just going to pull it up for myself really quickly so that I orient everything correctly. Sorry. He has 2 smaller triangular wetlands that initially on the site plan, they were intending to protect. But when we went out to the site, they are about 200 square feet each. And it's, like I said, extremely degraded, and they're not contiguous to any other wetland system. So John and I both suggested that they fill those wetlands in and focus their efforts more strongly on protecting the larger wetlands further back from those 2 smaller pieces. And also protecting the 10-mile river, which is, I believe, about 30 feet from the site. John can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But currently, both that wetland system and the 10-mile river will be protected by silt fence that they're intending to put up. And the 10-mile river will further be protected by an existing stone wall that should prevent any surface runoff from contaminating it. And then there's an additional wetland system towards the back of the property. And we were looking at allowing them to potentially fill in another chunk of it so that they have access to the back of their property if they, need to use it to put a deck on, if they, heaven forbid, need access for an emergency vehicle, if they need access for construction vehicles, things like that. We want them to have feasible access to the back of their property around their house. Currently, it's about a 20-foot distance from the house or where they were discussing adding a deck to the wetlands. And so we were thinking that they should prioritize the rest of that particular wetland system and fill in that portion so that if they need to get heavy machinery or trucks, what have you, onto their site, that's feasible. And also so that they can better prioritize the rest of the wetland system.
Okay.
And I also would like to add that we considered whether or not they could potentially move the location of the house on the site. And given the location of the septic system, it's really not feasible. It's not something that the septic system itself really can't be moved, and the house, I think, is already going to need to be lifted up so that the septic system is functional. So there are some additional complications there preventing them from moving the house further from the wetlands.
Okay, very good. Any questions? We did not, did we accept this application? Make a motion to accept it yet? Okay, what, do I have a motion to accept the application? Someone want to make a motion? Mary, you
Sure.
want to make, it? Okay. Anyone want to second it? Tip, okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So moved, thank you. Okay. So we'll discuss it. Will the owner be at the next, able to attend the next meeting?
Yeah, well, a little surprised I wasn't here tonight because we've probably been back and forth with the owner was in Portugal until recently, but we've been back and forth with the son a half a dozen times. We had a revision to the plan. We discussed it at length, so I'm a little surprised that Eric, the son, didn't make it out. But we should also do a site walk, and if the commission could schedule
Yes.
that for this Saturday, I could be available to attend.
This
And you get a
Saturday?
better feel for.
Did you
Get a
say
better
this
feel.
Saturday, John?
That'd be nice. If you can't, then next Saturday, whatever. But
No,
I was just suggesting that I'd be available this Saturday. I'll
okay.
be gone next.
Could everybody be there next Saturday about 9 o'clock, okay?
Wait,
Nope.
what date is that?
Sorry,
Saturday.
Mary?
I may not be available. I'm not sure of my schedule yet. I may have to be in Massachusetts.
Oh,
October
okay.
9th.
I'll know more about
This
it
is
tomorrow.
an easily accessible site, Mary. So if you need somebody to hold your hand, we can do that during the week. But it's right accessible, right from the road. You could just stand there and look at everything. The trees have been removed already, so
From now on, I'm wearing my knee-high duck boots.
good idea. Good idea.
No, I don't know my schedule. I may have to be attending a basketball tournament in Massachusetts, so I will get back to you, Flo.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
So the rest of us can go. I can make it, I'm sure.
Okay, great.
Can you make
Ian
it?
does,
I should be
Ian?
able to make it, yeah.
Okay. Chip?
He said yes. Chip said
Okay,
yes.
great.
Mhm.
So we'll try to get some more of the members out too, as well.
Okay, yep.
Okay, so that takes care of that. The next order of business is the approval of the special meeting minutes of August 21st and September 11th. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
Chip,
Tip, okay. Do I hear a second?
yeah.
Very good. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, approved. Nobody's there. No, we don't have any audience of citizens. Is there any communications or correspondence that we should know about, Flo?
No, I have none.
Nope, okay. Do we have anything that anybody would like to discuss? Okay. And how about some administration reports, administrative reports, John or Isabel?
I prepared something, so I can take that. And Isabel is welcome to chime in or add to it. But I just have three issues that I think the commission would want to hear about. And we did not have a meeting in September, which I forgot about because we did meet for 2 site walks. So,
Right.
and I wasn't clear on whether we had a meeting or whether we talked about these issues that I'm bringing up now. And we did, because we met at the site walk, and then we each shared how difficult that was, that September 2nd storm event, and how we all experienced it in a different way, but we all recognized how bad it was. And we have not interviewed or spoken to anybody who remembers anything like that in their time in Columbia. So this is a singular event. Now, maybe those of you who are a little older remember the 1956 rain event, but I don't know if comparison-wise, does anybody remember that versus what happened on September 2nd? Were you in the same location or not? No?
I was too young.
So was I. I was only 6 or 7 years old. But I was also on Staten Island, New York, and we didn't have what you guys had up here, I'll tell you that. But nonetheless, let me just say for the record that everyone we've spoken to, nobody in the last 30 to 40 years remembers anything like this. And based on all the information that we gathered, and some of it from Mary Roykel and some from John Valente's ring, meaning my ring at my house registered like 35 times in the same period of time that Mary stated that the intensity was close to 3 inches in a couple 3 hours.
4 to 5.
I had to think. Sorry, Mary.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You said 3 inches in how many hours?
I think it was 2 a.m. until 5 a.m. So it might have been 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I had the same experience.
Unbelievable.
I had the same experience. So I did not do a rainfall calculation, but my ring went off every 3 minutes for like 3 hours. So at about the same time that you were registering that experience, I verified it through my a similar situation in Chaplin. But so that rain intensity was equivalent to a 25-year event if you extrapolate not just the total rain in a 24-hour period, but the intensities of, they do a 6 and 9 and a 12-hour intensity. And I can tell you, based on those numbers, 3 inches in 3 to 4 hours equates to a 25-year event. So we experienced quite a catastrophic event in town. And those of you who drove around and saw some of the inundation, the town culverts and driveways and such. And so we know how bad it was. So we went to 33, I think it was, Erdoney Road, and spoke to Scott Fortner, and he was telling us and showing us a film of what had happened in his backyard, where he has 2 32-inch culverts. And not only were those inundated, but the flow came back towards his house, and it was around 4 to 5 inches deep, and around 15 to 20 foot in width, that went right past his house when it left the stream bank. So what has happened there, we think, is that prior to the development of 33 and 35 Erdoney Road, that the stream was altered. So rather than the stream coming down off of the hills in the back and flowing in a straight line, they bent the stream in 2 90-degree angles to get it around a potential house site. So that channel left that watercourse and basically almost ran into it did run into Scott's house. So we saw some pretty scary situations where homeowners their homes were threatened by the storm event, and we saw some driveways that were taken out, and we saw some of the town roads that were close to being lost to this rain event. If it persisted a little longer, we would have probably lost Erdoney Road right at that culvert coming down from Pine Street and such. So it was fairly close. It was fairly close to being a catastrophic event. So we've also looked at Latham Hill earlier in the month, and Chip was right. There was a beaver dam, because after that September 2nd storm event, that the depth of the water in that channel had dropped 1.5 feet because that storm had washed out the beaver dam. And then 2 weeks later, it was up 6 inches. So the beavers are back at it. And I told Mark that they should probably find that beaver dam and then do something about it, because it's compromising that particular that crossing there. Because rather than having a lot of freeboard, they're losing about half of their capacity for water to flow through those pipes. So they're going to have more frequent flooding of that road as the beavers stay active and that dam stays up. So someone should give them a hand with that as far as determining where that beaver dam is and then taking it down. The other issue was McNerney had contacted me and he wanted to get started, and his engineer had left the state, and he had modified his plan, and what he would like to do is take out 10 feet of pipe at the road and increase the size of that plunge pool, and at the same time be able to stone it and then create his road to go over the pipe and get to the dry land that he has further down Erdoney Road. So I was pretty much in agreement that made good sense to do that. And rather than taking out 10 feet at the other end, he would take out, I think it was 4 feet at the other end, and then take out 10 at the roadside, which I think is a fairly good compromise, in that if we can get better control of that water coming onto the site and be able to allow some of the sediment to settle out, we'd be benefiting the wetlands a lot better than just removing 10 feet of pipe at the far end. So I will get a copy of that plan to you. I'm sorry I didn't have it tonight to share with you, but I will make sure that we put a copy in the email and you guys can look at it in the next couple of days. So other than spending the better part of the second and later on that week looking at some of the issues that caused by the rain, we've just been very busy just going over, looking at different sites around the lake, and working with Isabel, bringing her up to date on the way we do things in the town of Columbia. So it's been a very active, very busy month. I'm going to be gone at the end of next week. I'll be gone for a couple of months. I'll be communicating remotely, but Isabel will be in full charge of conducting the inspections and issuing permits. I believe Isabel's qualified to be the authorized agent sometime in October, Darcy said?
Yes, when I spoke to Deep, they said that the course should be up by October 15th at the latest. So then once I can take that, I'll be completely certified.
Great.
So while I could work with Isabel while I'm gone if we need to sign any permits for activities in the upland, not in wetlands. And at the same time, our zoning agent is also qualified to do the same. So between myself and the zoning agent, and then Isabel getting qualified in the middle of the month, we should have everything covered. So I'm leaving you in capable hands, as you could tell already, I'm sure.
Yes.
You're here.
Mm,
Thank you, John, for all
Yeah.
you do.
absolutely.
Hey, John.
You're welcome. Yep.
It's always been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Yes.
John, we still have your number.
Yeah, use it anytime, please. It's really boring being at home here and not in Columbia or running around. So I had to make some adjustments.
You haven't found a new
So-
hobby yet?
Or You'll
No.
find plenty to do, John.
Yeah.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Sure.
Okay, Mary, and who seconds that? All in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
aye, aye.
So
Thank you,
moved.
everyone.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Good to see you. Hopefully to see you next weekend. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Flo, I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
okay.
Mhm.
Thanks, Flo.
You're welcome.
Yep, thank you. Flo.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you, Flo.
you're welcome. You-
We'll catch up.